Hello, everyone. I hope you had a great week and a Memorial Day weekend. With this week's discussion, we are exploring the difference between freedom and liberty in early Western civilization. While we often use these terms freedom and liberty interchangeably today, in classical thought, they had different meanings tied to political life, moral responsibility, and human nature. So let's start with freedom. In the ancient world, particularly in Athens, freedom meant not being enslaved, especially to Aristotle. It was about personal autonomy, the ability to make choices for yourself without being under the control of someone else. If you were a free man in Athens, you could own property, speak your own mind in public, and make decisions about your own life. Freedom was a personal status. Now, liberty is a bit different, however, and this idea developed more clearly in the Roman Republic. Liberty wasn't just about personal independence. It was about political participation under protection under the law. And a Roman citizen had liberty because they were a part of a society where laws made by elected officials, not by a king or a dictator. And liberty meant being governed by laws that applied to everyone, not just a ruler, or not just by the people who were being ruled. So here's the key difference. Freedom is about individuals' condition, whether or not someone is free from the domination. Liberty, however, is about the structure of that society in which people are living in, whether or not the government is just or just participating. So, in essence, in our examples that we've seen in ancient Western civilization, Athens, a man might value freedom because he's not a slave. Where in Rome, a man might value the liberty because he has a voice in the government, especially with Rome being the originators of a republic with representatives. They were being still protected by that rule of law that still was followed by everyone, not just the common citizens. So of the readings that we were provided with this past week and weeks previously, which included Moira Walsh's Aristotle's Conception of Freedom and G. Kennedy's Cicero, Roman Republicanism and the Contested Meaning of Libertas. Discussing these philosophies of Cicero and Aristotle provide the perfect comparison for what liberty and freedom really meant in Western civilization. So for Aristotle, freedom was deeply personal and ethical. According to his Nicomachean Ethics, freedom is the ability to govern oneself by reason. That is, to choose virtuous actions voluntarily, and being one with oneself and having reason and an idea and understanding of what is right versus what is wrong and how you make choices yourself. In his Politics, Aristotle explains that true citizens are free because they participate in ruling and being then ruled in turn. Having that exchange kind of the starting to be the essence and the foundation of what we view as a social contract today in our constitutions. So this civic freedom is not being doing whatever one wants, but about contributing to the common good within the polis that Aristotle describes it as. And then finally, in rhetoric, Aristotle notes that democratic societies often misuse this idea of freedom, treating it as a license, the ability to do whatever one desires. Again, he believes that it's not just having complete free will and being able to choose and decide and think whatever you want to do with your free will, but being able to use it to contribute to society as a whole. And he warns that this misunderstanding can lead to disorder and the breakdown of political community once people start to take advantage of what they believe their will is. So Aristotle distinguishes freedom from liberty by framing freedom as this internal capacity for rational self-governance and moral choice, rather than the external ability, which we'll see that Cicero kind of describes it as, this ability to act without restraint. Now, true freedom, in his view, is not doing what one desires again, but living virtuously and contributing to the common good. Really, this holistic society that everyone is contributing to and having that moral free will to contribute and benefit not just yourself, but the community as a whole. In contrast, we see Cicero's concept of liberty is grounded in law and political structure. Now, on the Republic, one of Cicero's main contributions, he defines liberty as the condition of living under a just and stable laws. He argues that this liberty is protected not by lack of restraint, but by the rule of law rooted in reason and natural justice. This idea of justice is really tied with what is viewed and why it's natural is how law is viewed and understood through the process of living. and that there is a justice system that applies how these rules and laws should be applied and what is fair and just for all people and in all situations. This really kind of shows kind of the essence of what has come with Western civilization in this idea of a justice system that is continually reviewing itself and applying its situation in its given time and space. So Cicero also emphasizes civic duty in on duties, claiming that moral responsibility and public service are necessary to preserve liberty in the Republic. And according to G. Kennedy's article, Cicero saw liberty as freedom from domination, especially from tyrants or unchecked rulers or just slavery in general. His idea of liberty was political and collective, about citizens defending the Republic against an arbitrary power. And he defined liberty as this collective political condition that's secured by just laws, civic duty, and protection from arbitrary power again. So unlike freedom as a personal autonomy, Cicero's Libertas is rooted in the rule of law. Again, compared to Aristotle, where he expects people to kind of have a moral compass in not only what their free will is and their freedom and how it contributes to society, Cicero is really relying on the rule of law to be followed and understood by the citizens, and that not only that they just expect to follow it, but that they are reviewing how laws are followed through this law of nature, and that they are continually being applied and are continued to be just in that given time and space. So true liberty for Cicero is not the absence of restraint, but that presence of justice and order with a stable republic, and which he still insists and expects that the citizens are a part of that goal as well. So to Cicero, this difference between liberty and freedom lies in the distinction between a lawful civic condition and unchecked personal autonomy. Cicero defines its liberty as living under just, stable laws that are based on natural reason. Liberty means being protected from the arbitrary power of tyrants or rulers. And liberty is maintained through, again, this civic duty and public service and moral responsibility. So you're still seeing a moral compass and moral responsibility, just like Aristotle, but with Cicero, the emphasis is more on this rule of law that is implemented by the Republic. And it's a condition shared by the citizens who participate and uphold this Republican order. Liberty is not the absence of restraint, again, but while Cicero doesn't focus explicitly on freedom as much as Aristotle does, the idea of doing whatever one pleases is still not coincides with his idea. So without law and duty, personal freedom can turn into a license, undermining justice and threatening liberty itself. So again, Cicero and Aristotle still kind of see eye to eye on that sense, for sure. So what is this difference between freedom and liberty from the lens of Aristotle and Cicero in ancient Western civilization? According to Moira Walsh and Aristotle's conception of freedom, Aristotle saw freedom as internal, this rational control of one's actions in pursuit of virtue, where Cicero, on the other hand, viewed liberty as this external factor, where the political and legal conditions, this natural rule of law and justice, was a very significant factor in how people lived their lives and how their morality and their freedom was secured. So to conclude, Aristotle and Cicero offer two complementary but distinct views that clarify this difference between freedom and liberty. Aristotle sees freedom as personal, this ethical condition, the ability to govern oneself, and true freedom is found in a rational self-control and contributing to the good of the public, not acting without limits, where Cicero defines liberty as this political and legal condition, secured by just laws, moral duty, and the protection from an arbitrary power. So for Cicero, liberty is not about doing as one pleases, but living within a stable republic governed by reason and justice. But together, their philosophies show that freedom concerns the inner life of the individual, while liberty depends on this external structure of a just society. So I look forward to hearing everyone else's interpretations of freedom and liberty, and this balance and contrast and interpretation from what we've gathered in the reading. And I hope you all have a great rest of your week. So take care.